Vicki Morgado, welcome to Competencies Without a Classroom. I'm super excited that you're here and that our listeners are going to get to learn a bit more about you and some of the amazing work that you're doing in the classroom. But before we jump into all that fun stuff, Vicki, I'm going to start this podcast the same way we start every podcast. And it's by starting with probably the most important question that you're going to get today. It's a question that our listeners, they want an answer to. So Vicki, when it comes to pineapple on pizza, are you a yes or a no on that one?
Yes, I love pineapple, and I usually pair it with hot peppers.
Ooh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I love that. I'm going to try it.
It's really good.
You're on the right side of the team. We're in the slight majority at this point. And it's what I assume that our listeners are also behind. So congrats. Now that we're fans of yours, Vicki, can you give us a bit of background? So who are you and what are you doing for work right now?
Yeah, so this is my 21st year in education. And I'm currently working in Ontario, and I work with mostly grade 7 and 8 students, and I work in 11 schools, and my role is an elementary guidance and an experiential learning teacher. So that's an awesome job. It's probably my favorite job ever. So awesome. Yeah.
Well, thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thanks.
Now, Vicki, as you know, season 1 of this podcast, we spent a majority of the time talking to industry professionals, learning about what 21st century skills, what core competencies they're looking for when they're building out their 21st century teams and what those actually look like in action. Because obviously it's really easy to tell our students, you need to be a problem solver, you need to be a communicator, you need to be a collaborator. But what does that actually look like in the workplace? So we've done a pretty good job of having conversations and distilling that information into actionable takeaways. Now with season 2, the reason we're talking with people like yourself, Vicki, is we know that educators are doing some really great stuff in empowering their students to develop those skills within the classroom. But I personally believe a lot of those stories get siloed. You know, I'm in a fortunate position that I get to work with educators all across North America, and I get to hear these stories. So I want to use this platform as an opportunity to amplify the voice of the educator and share those stories. So with that, Vicki, you know, I'm a teacher listening to this on the drive into school. What's one idea, something I can borrow and steal from something you've done with your students in the past as it relates to empowering them to develop one of these 21st century skills?
So one of the things that I'm working on right now with one of my schools is the Do Your Bit Challenge. And that is working with the microbit and the UN Global Goals. And it allows you to basically have the students take a problem that's out in the world, take one of the UN Global Goals and use the microbit to design and solve that problem, to design a prototype. And it's a contest right now that is open globally to people all across the world between the ages of 8 and 18 years old. I love it because it combines real world tech with problem solving and digital skills, and it allows students to really learn to make a difference using technology. And there are prizes. So up until July 30th, you can actually enter the contest. So I've started working with one of my schools, and we started with the design thinking process and connecting it to the UN Global Goals. And we actually started with exploring what kind of problems in the world we want to solve. So we use this platform called SparkPath, and the students do a variety of cards and they kind of flip them, and then they came up with a problem that they were interested in. And from there, they're coming up now with different prototypes and ideas. So we're in the brainstorming and empathize part of our project. So I'm excited to see what they come up with.
That's so cool. So for people who haven't heard of, you know, and we're going to link to everything you just talked about, but for the global goals, the UN goals, are they what I think they might be, like improving literacy, reducing poverty, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so exactly. So in 2015, world leaders got together and they officially came up with the Sustainable Development Goals, or they're called SDGs, that there's 17 of them. And so by 2030, it's exactly what you said. They want to end poverty, fight inequality, address climate change. And so it's looking at those goals, and there's the world lesson. There's a website that teachers can go to get more information and lessons and also the Do Your Bit website has wonderful activities that take like 15 minutes to get you started that I've been using as well. So you don't have to be super, well versed in the microbit or in the challenges. It's just a great way to learn alongside your students.
That sounds fantastic. And I'm so happy that you're doing that, Vicki, for a number of reasons. I mean, one of the things that I've learned from, a big part of my job is working with educators to help students kind of figure out life after high school or figure out what's going to happen. And one of the, there's so many options, and the options are always changing about what could happen after high school. one of the biggest things that I've learned, especially more recently, but it's diversity of exposure is a huge thing. So exposing students to all the different things that exist in the world through something like Spark Path is one way to start the conversation. UN, these goals is another way to start that conversation. Just having these things, but more than that, diversity exposure is one of them. It's also allowing students to solve real world problems. That's a big thing that keeps coming back up, that if students can work on something that they know, they're not just doing it for the grade, they're not just doing it because there's an answer in the textbook and that's what they're told to do. They're doing it because the work that they're putting into this may end up making a real difference in the world. They really sink their teeth into it. So I love that you're combining all that, and there's so many competencies that I'm sure are coming out of these, from problem solving, communication as they're working with their different teams, empathizing, like you're talking about, with different scenarios and different people around the world. So that's a fantastic one. And microbit is what you said, right? We'll link to that one in the show notes as well. Yeah, cool. So Vicki, congratulations. You've done such a good job with this project that you've just been promoted to superintendent for the next 10 minutes. But you're you're already being put to work. You now have been tasked with deciding one competency. So what's one of these 21st century skills? You can only pick one of them. Every grade 12 student has to display evidence of one of these skills in their portfolio in order to graduate. What skill would you pick?
So I was thinking about this a lot, and I think that I would pick service, because I feel like giving back and helping others, if our students come out of high school with that mentality that I'm not just going to go out into the workforce and make money, but I'm going to do so with purpose, and I'm going to do so with service. And I feel like they would be happier if they did that. And I feel like they would be more driven, and they would feel more successful and economically advantaged in the world. So
it's a fantastic answer. I think that community service is one of the greatest hacks out there, right? Because you're getting real world experience, you're developing real world skills, and you're giving back at the same time, right? So it's all intertwined, and that's a great way to do it. So fantastic answer. Vicki, let's shift and do some rapid fire questions for you. So
okay.
What's a life skill that you weren't taught in high school, but maybe that you wish that you were?
I would say mindfulness. And I'm trying this a lot with my classes. So when the pandemic hit, I actually took an MSBR course, which stands for Mindfulness Stress Based Reduction with Mindfulness Every Day. They're in Toronto, but they offer online courses. And I was wanted to take it, but I kept making excuses. And it really has brought me a lot of tools that I can use to cope with a pandemic, and that I've been able to use in my classrooms, and just to deal with the stress and the, constant pivoting and changing that's going on in education. So, and I'm not talking about like just sitting on a mat with your legs crossed meditating. There's so much more to mindfulness. So that is definitely something that I wish I had been taught when I was younger, for sure. Because I think there's a lot of strategies as well that could be helpful.
100%. I mean, have you done anything like that with your students in the class, or shared any of those kind of strategies with them?
Yeah, we've been doing I've been talking a lot about how to deal with strong emotions, and, using different tools. Like I listened to Tara Brach, who is a mindfulness guru, and she talks about using RAIN to deal with strong emotions. So I think often, even as adults, we push away when things get tough, and find different ways to deal with it. And so just using that acronym of recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture has been really powerful. And then just like, short breathing techniques, using the mental health schools kit. A lot of that is tied into mindfulness and finding ways to breathe, right? And just pausing has been really powerful, and check in with our bodies and with ourselves. So, and there's a lot of scientific research. It's been, there to basically, show that this is really, really powerful tools to use with people in all kinds of different environments, including education. So.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm happy the conversation is moving in the direction that it is, that it's becoming less of a, woo-woo thing, mindfulness, and there's real research that's going into it to prove to people the benefits of this. I'm a big practitioner myself. I do the sit down meditation thing every morning with the Calm app. So
yeah, that's actually the app I use.
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't recommend enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Vicki, you have a billboard. Everyone's going to see this billboard. You can write one thing on it. What does it say?
So I think you'll relate to this as somebody who uses a Calm app, but you are enough and you belong. Like, I think a lot of times people are unhappy because they're looking to achieve something, or they're looking to be more. But I think if we all just cut ourselves some slack and be more compassionate, we'll realize like you're good where you are. Not that you can't improve. I'm always looking to improve a little bit, but especially right now, I think we just all need to like just, befriend ourselves and be a little more compassionate with each other and kind.
100%. Yeah. Being kind to yourself and also not comparing yourself to others, right? Just realizing that, yeah, you are enough. I love that. I'm not even going to build off that because it's such a great answer. I think I already know how you're going to answer this then, Vicki. IQ or EQ, you can only pick one. Which one are you going to pick?
Definitely EQ.
Yeah, all day. Vicki, did you have a favorite class growing up, maybe high school?
Yeah, I did. It was music. I played
Awesome.
the drums, I sang, I loved it. Yeah.
Are you still musically inclined? You still?
I'd like to pretend I am. I'm not as musically inclined as I'd like to be, but yeah, I do have a drum set in the basement that I play on, and I do love music. And I wish there was more focus on the arts in school for sure.
Makes two of us.
Yeah.
Now, Vicki, so maybe this is the answer to this question then. You have a magic wand. You can change one thing about the education system. What are you changing?
So I would actually like to see more less focus on grades in school. A couple of years ago, before I took my current role, I tried to go moving away from grades in my grade 3 class. And for a year, I kind of did it. There's a teachers taking out grades hashtag on Twitter. And I read, I think it's Star Sackstein's book. Yep. And so I honestly, it felt so authentic to teaching and to what I wanted to do. And I was pretty terrified, to be honest, when I started that process. But I found like I really got to know the students better. They did better. I gave them more chances. Like it really felt more real to how the type of teacher I wanted to be. So having said that, like I'd love to see a revamp of the EQAO to more portfolio based, to more service based focus, as opposed to coloring in little blocks of, answers. Yeah.
Cool. I have a lot I can talk about that. So it's a personal passion of mine. If you go, so I just started, actually, I think you really enjoyed it as well. There's this thing, it's only, I don't know, 4 or 5 months old. It's called SHIP 30 for 30. And it was actually an educator who turned me on to it. It was an educator who's since left the profession to become a full-time consultant for education type companies. So he actually just wrote a 3-part series for us on ungrading. So one of my favorite books right now, speaking of STAR, is called Ungrading. And I'll link to this one in the show notes as well. STAR is a contributor. There's about, I think, 15 different teachers. Some are K-12, some are higher ed, that talk about the specific how they do it in their classroom. And, full disclaimer, I'm not an educator. The reason I mentioned that in my Twitter, the SHIP 30 for 30, the whole idea is you join a community and then you're forced every day to write something for 30 days. And there's this framework, it's called atomic essays. And every day you publish something up to 250 words and you have a theme or a bucket. And a big part of mine is 21st century skills and competencies, which I haven't talked about. The first 3 posts that just started are about grades and how I think they need to go. And obviously that's easy for me to say as someone who's not an educator, but the light bulb moment for me is, especially during season 1, a lot of people I talked about, like our friend, Dr. Ramit Bellin, talk about failure a lot and how important failure is, because in my personal opinion, you learn the most from failing. Mm-hmm. And in a system that is incentivized by grades, and again, this is just my personal opinion, you fail a test, especially in high school, good luck coming back from that and getting the grade that you really want. And the analogy that I gave when I wrote about it the other day is, let's say I'm assigned a book to read. Everyone has to read a book and we're given 5 options. Turns out I've already read one of the books. I read it last year. I know I'm getting a grade on this. Which book do you think I'm going to pick? I'm going to pick the one personally that I've already read, because I'm going to put them in the least amount of effort and I know I'm going to get the best possible grade. I'm not going to take a chance. I'm not going to take a swing on that new book, which might introduce me to a new idea and a new concept and allow me to grow, because I am incentivized by the grade I need to get, because it's the system that we're all living within.
It's true. It's true. And it's funny because in grade 3, they weren't as tied into the system. So I didn't find it that hard to go gradeless. Right. But I think as you get older, you learn to play the system. It's exactly what you're talking about, right? Yeah. And so what happens to those students who feel they can't play the system well? Where's their role in it, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is a whole nother podcast, but it's really cool to hear you talk about that. So Vicki, wrapping up, where can people go to learn a bit more about you and all this cool stuff that you're clearly working on?
So I am on Twitter. My handle is at Vicki Morgado 1. And I also have on that you'll find a link to my blog. So I don't blog as often as I like, but it's called Global Connections to 2014.edublogs.org. Yeah. So I just post resources and it's more for me to reflect on stuff I'm doing, and also just to keep track of some things for myself where I'm posting. And so, yeah.
100%. And we'll link to all that in the show notes for everyone to check out. So Vicki, I can't thank you enough. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds great. Thanks so much.